My name is Anu Rajiv, and I will be the host for today's session. Welcome you all to another Saturday morning wellness dialogue session with our helpline. I can't believe we have been doing this for 2 years now. Every month, it has been wonderful experience learning through a lot of talented and you know experienced speakers like yourself, Dr. Ashish. Every month through this platform, we have been bringing topics related to mental health. We've had empathy, listening, suicide, active. I'm sorry, was I audible this entire time, Dolly?
So there was a
Now
little
you
bit of interruption,
you
but
got
it's
this.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's surprising. I don't know why it went on mute on its own. I'm so sorry. But I was just saying that we've been doing this for two years now, and the objective is not only to raise awareness on these topics, but also to really help us, use this information in our day-to-day lives with the people we love and our friends and family, right? So before we jump into the session, I'd like to talk few lines about Pukar Helpline. We have been um, in action since August 2023. It's a completely volunteer driven emotional support helpline. It's free. It's available to anyone who's feeling stressed, depressed, or suicidal. It's completely non judgmental and thoroughly trained, interested, and willing volunteers are always there waiting to listen to you and try to understand you without any judgment. And I have no doubt that each one of us must have been in situations where we know the importance of this. We operate every day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we will put the details of the helpline on the chat so that you can share it with people who you think might benefit from such a service. Sometimes it might just be us, and that's okay too. Before I introduce Dr. Ashish, I'd just like to quickly do some housekeeping and a very brief introduction about the topic. Um, we would love to have more videos on. Right now, it's just Dr. Ashish, Dolly, and me. We would love to see who we are talking to, and it really helps the speaker as well. So please do switch on your videos. That would be super, super nice of you. I'm sure we will not judge. We are trained in not judging. So please feel free to switch it on. During the end of the session, we will have a Q&A. But during the session, if you still feel like you have a question you want to ask, please put it in the chat and we'll pick it up either during or towards the end. And towards the end, we will also have a very short feedback form. It will take you less than a minute to fill to understand more about what kinds of topics you might like to see in this space and if this session was useful to you. Great. With that, again, requesting you all to switch on your videos, please. Coming to today's topic, student well-being. It's a topic that is not only interesting and relevant to students and their, support system. I think it's quite relevant to the society as a whole, if you really think about it. And I was just looking up some stats before the session, and it said, nearly this is by Times of India, I think. 3 in 5 students in major Indian cities now report moderate to high anxiety, with many of them showing signs of depression and emotional distress. These are students we're talking about. It's quite alarming to hear this kind of statistics. 1 in 5 students rarely feels calm, motivated, or excited. It's really quite disheartening to read about this. And this isn't just about grades or performance. I think it affects everything, right? It affects everything in a student's life: sleep, motivation, relationships, self-esteem, everything. And because so many, I think not in, it's not rare to find this, as the statistics suggest. It's not an isolated problem anymore. I think it's quite a widespread issue that we are facing. Ensuring student well-being, like I was saying, is not only relevant to the families and the support system, but also to the environment as a whole, because we need people who are growing up to, build a stable society, have good leadership, stronger communities, national growth. It's a lot of things that get impacted by just this one thing. So it's very, very relevant, I think, to talk about this and understand what is causing it and how we, in our own roles, can support this, right? And we have a wonderful speaker who can support us perfectly for this topic. Dr. Ashish Kumar, thank you so much for coming this morning. Good morning. He is a sociologist trained at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, with a specialization in gender and education in his research. He has been mentor of sociology at Women's University in Haryana for almost 18 years now, with a feminist pedagogical approach and a commitment towards mainstreaming creative classroom communication in higher education. In his free time, he does wonderful work like this, and he also enjoys writing poetry and fiction. So, thank you again, Dr. Ashish, for being here with us this morning. Um, Anything you'd like to say to start off? Otherwise, I have a lot of questions ready for you.
I see. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm at this critical juncture when we are facing this question of mental health, institutionally, socially. I think it's a kind of global emergency in a way to, address this idea of well-being. And I'm very, very thankful to Pukar Helpline, to Dolly, to you, and the way you, kind of conceptualized this session, and then invited me also here. So I would like to kind of share my insights, my research that I have been kind of developing over the years, these ideas which came up in my classrooms, and close observations of community, not just during my student period, but then later on much more as a teacher in a pedagogical way. So I'll be here sharing
Great.
these views in my personal capacity, and as they say, views are personal. So that's how it is. And nevertheless, I'll share insights from my university experience also, where I teach, and other experiences and reflections on media
Sure.
and other issues.
Wonderful.
So
Thank
now
you.
you can
Thank you
please
so much. I think
give it a start.
your your experience is already so exciting that I can't wait to start to get your inputs on this. I think I'm getting a few messages saying that your voice is not very audible. If you can speak up or maybe increase the volume on your end, that would be super helpful. So I think since the topic is student well-being, I want to start with what how do you see well-being in the first place, and then how do we extend it particularly to students. So would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so thank you for starting the session. Now, am I audible now? Is the voice better now? Am I audible?
It's okay for me. Dolly, is it okay for you? I don't see anybody else on video, so I'm calling on you. Yeah,
So,
okay, it's
because
fine now.
you are
It's
saying that
fine
the
now.
voice is cracking a little bit, so I thought maybe I'll speak a bit louder. Perhaps I was slow.
Yes, that
Speaking
would be
slowly,
helpful.
perhaps.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. So when we are in a meditative, posture, at times you start speaking softly, and one loses track. So I would count on you to kind of remind me of these gaps, as and when they
sure,
come. So this idea of
sure.
well-being, I guess this is the foremost thing that one should do, when we are trying to think about various ways to develop interventions, and addressing these concerns that each and every day we are hearing from different, very many sources, all over media, and from people we know, parents discuss, they're so concerned, and at times you feel, your heart goes out to the people who face this pain at times, when the expectations are unmet, and at times it results in such tragedies that you wonder what actually we are doing as a society, what kind of just generational shift we are experiencing now. So, to think of this concept itself, then perhaps I would not to be too much academic, I would still, quote WHO, at the outset. WHO believes that they had this definition way back in the 1948 that it doesn't mean just the absence of, well-being doesn't mean just the absence of
Mm.
disease. So it goes much, way beyond that, and you have this social, physical, emotional side, and you must really feel being well, in the sense that your action, your agency that you have since birth, you should be able to experience it. And then they also expanded upon it. So in 2001, I guess, they added a few dimensions. Like they said that you need to have this idea of coping normally with the stresses, and to
Mm.
continue to work in a
Am I the only one who's losing his voice?
productive
It's cracking for me also.
way for
Dr. Ashish, we're losing
community.
your voice and
So,
video. I think there's some issue with the internet.
okay,
Yeah, your video is frozen now and your voice is coming in and out.
so let me just see. Is the voice better now?
The
Is the
voice
voice
is
better
better
now?
now. Yes, it is. But yes, and
Is
the
the
video
voice?
is
It's better
beginning.
now.
Yes,
So I'll just remove this. Perhaps this mic was creating some issue. And the video is okay.
video is fine as well right now. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt your
Okay.
flow of thought. You were saying that,
Yeah, so
they've added certain.
this piece of technology was creating some issue.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I was saying that the WHO expanded, and we have been expanding this idea of well-being, in our researches also. Now, post pandemic, during the pandemic, we saw these concerns. We found ourselves caught unawares kind of situation.
We
We
lost
found
you for a bit
ourselves
again.
everything. Okay.
Now
So
it's fine.
do I need to fix before I resume, or
If there is another alternative Wi-Fi that you are able to access, or the mobile hotspot, if you think that will be better, because it
yeah?
does
So
seem to
I
be
put
going in and
two
out.
things here. I put the hotspot on. I put the Wi-Fi also.
Hmm.
So I don't know how it is. Okay, usually it is working, but I don't know how it is happening. So do I really need to address it? Should I pause and
It's fine
address
right
it?
now. Please, if it extends over a longer
So
period,
we
then I
can,
will bring it
yeah.
up.
So please
Otherwise,
remind,
we'll let it
yeah,
be.
yeah. Please
Sure,
let me know. Okay.
sure.
So I was saying that when we saw this pandemic happening, we got to question ourselves as to what do we actually mean by education itself. What is the meaning of well-being, or how do we address these concerns of the definitions would say a lot of things, but nevertheless, when you experientially see things, then the whole canvas changes. So there was a lot of insight generated, and there was a lot of debate all around. But frankly speaking, tell me, post-pandemic, do we actually see a difference, or is it just that the hybrid learning mode is just a concept now? That okay, now we can have online learning added to it. Suppose you are faced with certain problems that once again require you to kind of go back to a situation where your communication is limited, and your physical outreach becomes difficult, which perhaps a lot of digital natives may be experiencing in their lives. Because when you look at these new generation, you use these terms, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I don't know. I mean, there's so many other labels which are being used. But nevertheless, there is a difference, because they're digitally connected more than the millennials or others, or perhaps not. So if you look at this whole idea of understanding well-being, perhaps you need to you have to go back to a sense of self that so I would just address in a very normal way what the theories would say. So theories would say that you need to have this for example, Maslow talks of actual self actualization in his hierarchy of needs. So you basically need to understand what does a human being mean for us, the idea of being itself before you talk about a being being well. So now human being is we have this agency, we are born with these, for example, you can speak. So you have a whole framework of rights adjusted to that, the fundamental ways of being. That is, you can speak, so you have a right to speech and expression. So you can walk, so you have a right to free movement and assembly, you can associate. So this very agency that we have as human beings, which we discovered in the modern period, because the modern period brought these ideas of scientific understanding of self to us in a very institutional way to the mainstream. The whole discourse changed. So now we have this idea of constitution and laws and all the institutional, frameworks and designs uh, put in place to cater to the idea of agency and being itself. And thus, the idea of well-being, assumes institutional dimensions. So we can't just talk about well-being now in a very isolationist way that, for example, you look at someone and you say, okay, this person seems to be in stress. And now think of a child, a child is developing through these associations the child makes with the outside world. So initially they are in the familial setup. The familial setup is having a lot of affective expression. So they are affect centric, looking at the significant others, as Mead would call it, the mother and parents, as the people who translate the word, the whole setup for them. So they would look at themselves through that mirror. So it's a looking glass. No, society becomes a looking glass through the significant others. So they tend to understand things. For example, the toys they have. So they would start attributing personality to the toys also. So moon is also called maternal uncle in certain cultures. No, so Chanda Mama. So the a child basically extends this idea of the self to the whole world around her in such a way that these people who are the significant others just placed next to her in the familial setting become the mediators. So they acquire this sense of who am I with a communication which happens with these people. And then you put the child in school. Now what is the job of the school? The school acts as an agency of transition. It's like slowly the child has to be of the family, so to speak, to the civic morality society.
Dr. Ashish, we are
So those
losing you
are
quite a bit right
okay.
now. Um,
I
yeah,
see.
now it seems to be okay. Now it seems to be okay.
Okay.
I think as soon as I call it out, it
So
becomes okay.
once father. So yeah, thank you so much. So I guess this point is
We've lost you again.
understanding of the self and other.
Um, Dr. Ashish, we've lost you. Would you like to try switching off the video maybe? Maybe that
Both
might help.
self and okay, okay.
And I think while you do
So
that, just
is
to
it
kind of
helpful
summarize
now?
what you were trying to say, yes, it's much better. Would it be okay for me to just
Are you
summarize
able
what you're
to
trying
hear?
to say? Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Yeah.
So what you're
Okay.
saying is that initially we come uh, with an understanding of self through others, and this through the journey of being a student, we are basically supposed to come into our own agency. Is that what you're trying to get to? If I got that right, and having that sense of agency is
Yeah.
what
Are
will
you able
bring
to
well-being.
are you able to hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
clearly.
So I was just trying to say that, a child slowly moves from a familial setup to the school setup. And now the school setup is introducing the whole idea of society. It becomes a mini society. As one of the thinkers also says, Durkheim, he says the school is like a mini society. And now all these roles that the child was, trying to associate with and, trying to understand through the parents and the extended family setup are now seen in a generalized way, in the sense that one's father is also a idea of father figure is there, the general father figure. So the child now starts understanding the idea of generalized expectations that the society has from them, and this is how identity starts emerging. So when identity is emerging in an institutional way, so you have a whole range of institutions now acquiring a shift in the experience of the child, and this experience is not just a cognitive experience, it is also an emotional experience. So now, this when you say, for example, the idea of expectations, it has a, just a two-way thing. One is that you have this expectation from who am I and what am I supposed to do, and later on this transition that you have from what does society expects from me. And this transition actually is a very pedagogical transition. So the child is now learning to understand performance, for example. So initially they may be, it's like, okay, I have to do good on a test because my mother will be very happy, and I'll get a lot of praise in the class. But now slowly they start associating the idea of performance, with this whole concept of career. And then they are introduced, for example, the idea of uniform. Initially they would think that, okay, what would you like to be when you grow up? Okay, I would be a doctor. So how do they see the doctor? The doctor wears a white coat and there's a stethoscope, and this role that is presented to the child in a very play way manner. That's the play way education initially. And now slowly they understand, that the idea of a doctor is related with the idea of health. So all these institutions now start, for example, food, nutrition, everything will start getting related. So the systemic view develops. So once the systemic view develops, the idea of agency also acquires a systemic orientation. Systemic means that, for example, you have this anatomy, the system of the body, and you have these different parts, but they work together. So similarly, in the society, you have these different institutions. For example, you have education, family, media, religion, democratic institution, banking, all kinds of institutions that they are now looked at as a system. They're presented to the child as a system through the studies. And that's what studies mean. You slowly uh, then even the idea of specialization may emerge later. But before that, the what I'm trying to draw home is this point that the body social, there's this one body self, okay, myself, and you have to take care of yourself, and you have to brush your teeth, your body is there, isn't that kind of thing? And now there's a body social attached to this. So now you start looking at the image of self also in that light. So who am I? For example, you have this, body shaming thing happening. Suppose now you have the media there. Media is projecting certain images, and people start associating with that. The kind of self worth, and and then they will experience bullying and other sort of things also in those terms. So this is how things start getting, complex as one moves from the familial zone to the zone of, schooling. Now you need,
Dr. Ashish, if I can just
yeah,
interrupt you a
please,
little
please.
bit there just to kind of put that together, because right now I love how you're taking it so step by step in terms of really seeing where this sense of self is coming from. But just to kind of put it together, um, you're saying that the well-being is basically impacted by these various systems that kind of we exist in. And it includes the whole physical, the body social, the just the social elements. I'm sure you'll come to that as well. But I think is it right that I've understood that you're trying to say the different aspects in the system that are affecting the students' well-being? Is that accurate?
Yes. So I'm saying both ways. So it's not just that you have these systems affecting, because you are in a system and these systems will play a role. For example, you look at the school. School is not just a building, and the room of the principal,
Yeah.
how important it is, because it is the system. It's not just a place for playing. No, it has a role. It is associated with the role of the classroom, like the music room, or for
Yeah.
example. So the whole idea of the extracurricular various debates, they are trying to understand this holistic, agency that they are supposed to practice. And
Mm.
here teachers act as mediators, and that's why you have parent teachers meetings also, because they're supposed to kind of develop a connect with the family, because school is the place where this transition is happening from the affective to the civic,
Mm.
space of society.
Yeah.
Civic morality, the affective morality, that okay, we are looking at it in a very emotional way. And so it's not easy for the child to achieve this transition, because they're growing up. Look at the recently we had a Netflix series titled Adolescence, and there was a lot of debate around it. And then people were writing on social media
Yeah.
as to what is happening, how to take care of our kids in such a situation. We don't even understand what is happening. From whom to protect, we don't know, because this you can imagine the kind of cyber threats that are there. And it's very difficult to talk to digital natives in a language of banning social media. But nowadays we hear of these ideas also. Look at the some of the Nordic countries. Now they're known for their human development index. The Scandinavian
Yeah.
countries, no, Norway and Sweden. So now they are also talking of not allowing access to
Yeah.
kids till a
Yeah.
certain age to these social media devices, because they are saying that
Yeah.
it is hampering the way kids are learning. So what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say is not just that there's structure out there, but that the structure is happening within, and the
Got
child
it.
is experiencing this structure with the communication that goes around. So
I have
with
a
the,
question
yeah.
about what you said a little bit earlier, that, the schooling system is the way for the child to transition into the civic. I loved how you said that, into the civic. You used a particular term. I'm not able to remember that, but it is a transition. And this transition has been happening for donkey's years, right? It's been happening for 100 years or so. But I'm curious, what has changed right now, in your opinion, for it to have caused so much of distress? It to just move from the concept of well-being to wondering, okay, I kind of get that, but okay, if it's a transition, why is it so difficult now? What has changed for them now?
Yes. So one is that I was just talking about a concept called that the child moves from affective morality to the civic morality through the
Civic
school. Through
morality,
school, yeah.
correct?
So the school becomes a kind of morality is this sense of good and bad. What you are
Yeah,
supposed to do, what is good for you. This whole
right.
idea of what is good. So you have this
Yeah.
idea of the good child, and
Oh
what is
my God, this is
what
a topic in itself.
Of course, but it is connected with a
Yes.
wider discourse. No, that's the idea of what is good education
Yeah.
and what is a good life. So the whole idea of ethics and law and everything, now unfolds within this frame. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was talking of one is that the idea of agency is a very structural idea. It is not that the individual in our societies, the modern societies, so to say, it's a very interdisciplinary, interdependent kind of world. For example, you have this system of expertise. If you are not well, you will go to a doctor for sure, and you will also verify the degree at times. If you don't know the doctor, you would perhaps like to know from where they have done their medicine. And this is an expert system domain. An expert system domain means that if something is going wrong, and that's the point you're raising, no, that what is going wrong now, if
Yeah.
something is going wrong, then you would like an expert to handle it.
Mm.
So we are interdependent, no? So if you are a banker, you won't handle health and education yourself. So
Mm.
if you are in the domain of teaching, for example, now it is becoming more and more, specialized. At the same time, you have this idea of the general orientation that a learner has. Now, for example, I'm a IT sociology, but just for a moment, imagine me to be a teacher of technology, or for example, an engineering teacher or a management person. Now, how my experience of my subject would orient me to the idea of stress is completely different to the
Yeah.
idea of a psychology, teacher being
Absolutely.
related to stress.
Absolutely.
Now, a psychology student perhaps would say that, okay, look at the idea of stress within also, because they would say stressor is within, and then, but uh, you have this idea of performance at the same time. And the children are dealing with it at very many levels. When I talk to the
Mm.
students, most of the times they say that this idea of the performative is what they find most difficult to deal with,
Mm.
because it is directly linked with their judgment. Now,
Absolutely. Yeah.
now compile on it, add to it social media validation. You
Yeah.
you are in a world where you are inventing words like parasocial. Now, parasocial
Mm.
means someone your connections, because those connections have undergone a shift. No,
Yeah.
we were just talking about, before the session began, living in metros. So
Yeah.
you would have the extended family here most of the times to take care of the,
Yeah.
kids. If you have something would emerge, that's what the idea of expert domains taking care. No. Now, when I was growing up, people used to say that television is the new grandma, because you listen to stories, dadi and nani's stories. Now television has taken over that role. So no more you have the elders telling stories to kids, rather TV is telling stories. And now who is the new anchor there? Tell me, what has happened to stories? The stories are now 15-second stories. Am I audible? I guess your video is.
Yes, you're audible. You're
Yeah.
audible.
So, in this era of 15 minutes of fame, 15 minutes of success, it is so. Sorry, I don't know. There was some flash and okay. So I was saying that in this era of quick fixes, you would like to have success also coming to you in a very uh, shall we say that you need to have some kind of a formula for it. So now take for example the idea of stress and well-being. You can't have a formula for it. You have to have a holistic framework, and it begins with the idea of communication. Because how do you develop this sense of self? Initially, this communication. Nowadays, we talk on LinkedIn and other platforms a lot about stories. But these stories are in a flux. And because every day the stories are experiencing these such seismic shifts, I would say. So one day something is trending, the other day something else is trending. So how would a child navigate that shift? It is said, why these Nordic countries are now, talking about this idea of the agency of learning being affected because of the early social media experience. If the frames are changing very fast, you know, perhaps developmental psychology tells us, Piaget's work and then constructivist approaches from Vygotsky and others, that only at a certain stage you can make sense of this quick shifts that is happening on the screen, or and you can't even solve problems, mathematical problems, and that's why you have age appropriate toys,
Your voice is breaking slightly, Dr. Ashish. I
because
have a
they're
question here.
only at a certain. Yeah, I'll put my video off if yeah.
Yeah, it
I
was
think
much
this will
better.
help the audio. Yeah.
You are able to
Yeah.
hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yes, loud and
I
clear.
just was wondering because you spoke about that we cannot have a formulaic way to approach it, and we need to look at it holistically with a holistic framework. So can you shed some light on that? How does that holistic framework looks like?
Yeah, surely. That's the high point of this, I would say, presentation in a way also. That because, most of the times we think of sectional approaches. Uh, if we look at the new policies also, the NEP and, whatever transitions we are happening, let's say bring multidisciplinary angles, to the process of learning. So the idea of learning itself, for example, when we say pedagogy, there's this privileging of the political at one level in pedagogy with all those, debates in the post-Marxist era. But now in the present, if you imagine the kind of challenges which we are facing from the digital, so you need to reinvent the idea of experiencing the world, at different levels. Now, the real difficulty is that we are not aligned conceptually to these discourses, and it's very easy to fall for some discourse which tells you, you have this. I'm sorry to say this, but then many times you hear that you be positive. Hmm. So if somebody is experiencing, certain issues, and one is not able to understand what is happening, firstly, you need to have this listening part. You listen, at times they just want to share with you, and then certain insights would emerge. The whole range of those, humanistic psychology therapies from Carl Rogers to, other people, finally Martin Seligman, they work with this idea of insight, that human being is capable to develop these insights, and that is the job of the system to cater to this, empowerment and enabling of the agency of the person to deal with issues or problems that are presenting themselves. Now, going back to the definition of well-being, for example, it says you should be able to deal with normal stresses. So it's not the idea of comfort, is the idea of, the ability to adapt with the challenges, which whatever format you are in, wherever, whatever context, it is presenting to you. So how would you deal with the challenges? No, one expert will not be able to solve the issue, because now look at medicine. You have to do a generalized course, no, you have to have an MBBS before you become an expert in psychiatry. So you need to understand the whole system. So that's how, if we do not have a systemic discourse and dialogue happening all across, not just disciplines, but media is very important. When I was growing up, I still remember, because that was the era in which we were, romanticizing the idea of science a lot. Nowadays it's all technology. People just want AI to solve the problems.
Yeah.
So the AI won't be able to solve, because you can't solve problems with pushing a button. You need a lot of discourse, dialogue, and dialogical sharing of ideas. So I was talking of listening, for example. There's one thing called passive listening, and there's active listening. Active listening means what? Active listening means that just by the act of being present somewhere, you are able to involve yourself in this process of where the whatever you are debating, you are able to see some creative insights. So even if you are critical, you have to be very creative and very patient, and you don't have to look at mental health also, or well-being for that matter, or any other aspect of our lives in a sectional way. So, listening would involve an understanding of these very different complex systems. You would need training. Nowadays, we are using terms like mentor and mentee a lot in the educational sphere. And it is also the outcome based discourse, that somewhere you have to produce these charts, and you have to show the proof that things have happened. But that is one thing. You can make processes, pathways are different from outcomes. You can't confuse pathways with outcomes. You can set a process in motion, but would it really result in the outcome? Now, for that, you need research. No, you can't say, okay, we have put a system in place. This is the system in place. We have advertised all these names, and these are the people. They are part of this committee. They will deal with grievances. They will deal with ragging. They will deal with other issues, bullying happening. And this is the person you can go for career counseling. So this is not how it works. They all have to sit together. So one institution also has these all different aspects: the aspect of economy, the aspect of health. Now imagine the daycare centers in a workplace, and imagine gender now. So if you are having a gender unequal system, how would you enable this idea of women going to work if you do not think of daycare centers associated with workplace? You can have guidelines for workplace harassment. The post Vishaka, we had that discourse, no, this Vishaka case. But and you have ICCs all over. But then very recently we had this controversy with the Me Too coming. And the Me Too movement came, the questions were posed that perhaps there are some structural problems. Why are people going to media and they're not going to the structural, whatever leverages are there, the whatever has been made available? Why is this naming and shaming suddenly into this discourse of harassment? Fundamental questions were raised. Nowadays, people talk a lot about masculinity. I remember how masculinity itself, at one level, was seen as toxic. But that's not a solution, no? So you rather, if you look at gender studies, it's a discourse which talks about how it develops over a course of time. It's a historical thing. This idea of how do you look at a manhood, or for that matter, femininity in a society. We have to understand that slowly, and that's where the
So, Dr. Ashish,
transgender
if
discourse
I
will
can,
also enter. So I will also, I was just trying to kind of wind up this answer, because Dolly, there is
sure,
this
sure.
very important question, that
Yeah.
how do you handle one thing in an institutional way? Because the problem is institutional. No, the problem institutional doesn't by institutions in social sciences, the word institutions caters to social structure, that is religion, media, family. These are the institutions. Caste. The institutions are the practices which have been established over a period of time. That's how we look at, in sociology, when we talk of social structure, we are saying a society is made up of these institutions. So a place perhaps would be, for example, you have an NGO, that would be an organization. That's the right terminology. Institution is this, education itself is an institution. And marriage is an institution. So institution means that, how people understand different aspects of life. social, economic, because they are taking these roles when they are part of this structure, isn't it? That's how you become part of structure. And that the process, we call it institutionalization. Like a pathway develops in a jungle, no? People start walking on a pathway. So it's a need satisfying mechanism. You have certain needs and the society is meeting its needs in a particular way, and you have a practice coming up. And now these practices change with time. Suppose new technology comes, so we moved from agricultural society to industrial society to now post-industrial, where the whole idea of manufacturing itself is service. Because the industrial society says this the manufacturing sector dominates, but now service sector dominates. Rather, you look at the idea of manufacturing itself as a customized way.
Yeah.
So you buy a car and you are flooded with these questionnaires as to what kind of improvements you would look for in this and what is your experience and this and that. So the next bunch of cars coming, they would introduce some changes. So that's how even the assembly line becomes service at one level. So we are this, post-modernization of our experience has happened. And now when we look at the idea of well-being in this complex scenario, talking of simple solutions won't help. But even simple solutions like listening to someone has a very complex, rendering. You have to understand this whole dynamic in order to you become an enabler of someone to find their voice. If you start, for example, you start giving suggestions. For at times I go to teach social work students, and I ask them, how do you look at social work? And they at times they also they are very enthusiastic, no, when they're beginning their education, they would say we want to solve social problems. But you look at the idea of social work says that a professional has to be a mediator. They only, you are not going to treat the problem, you will take them to a doctor. You have to
Yeah.
tell them, okay, it's like a link, it's a bridge you have to act. Now think of the teacher as a bridge. Now think of parents as bridges. Because the idea of parenting nowadays, you hear a lot about raising star kids. So there are startups you will let us coach you into it. You can't do that. You will just raise the performance bar for kids. People taking their kids to reality shows all the time. How would that help in understanding what fame means to kids? How would you translate the idea of fame to kids? You're making their videos. Many a times you see this when they grow up, perhaps they would ask these discomforting questions, because learning is primarily about asking questions. And how do you support that? If you support that, if you're able to support the learning agency of the learner, you are able to support their well-being. They things will take care of themselves, in their mind, because mind goes with heart. You can't separate, no. And for that you need expert, yes, you need expert domains, but also there, talking to they should sit together and talk to each other. There's a deliberation should happen, communication should happen. And this is what I refer to as the classroom model of communication. The classroom now is outside. Can you actually confine the classroom to the four walls anymore in this era? And that's what COVID taught us, no, that you can't do that. You can have a catastrophe played out in front of your eyes, and you'll feel completely helpless. Martin Seligman talks about it, the founder of positive psychology movement. He says this concept of learned helplessness. He says, you learn to be helpless. Psychology has this frustration aggression hypothesis. So if you're continuously getting frustrated in your ability to take action upon your environment, that's your agency. That's the framework of rights I was talking about. That's how state, the most important of institutions, the state, has to take care of this coordination, as a coordinating agency. And now civil society, as important as a state, because who will give feedback to state and who will give feedback to its members? The civil society organizations. And that's where I see Pukar helpline and these initiatives that have been there. I think I really respect this a lot, that you are trying to create this discourse. You contacted me. Now we are having this idea of well-being. We are debating, and so many questions will be generated. So this research is very important, but this can only happen if discussions happen and they are non-judgmental. So there is someone named Sharon Allison, if you have heard of. She talks of this concept of non-defensive communication. Don't defend yourself when you are communicating with someone, because this is the process of developing ego defense mechanisms. All defense mechanisms are coping ways. How do we stress is there, and then you try to deal with the stress with some coping mechanism. That's how therapy works also. So I don't know, I'm not a specialist, I'm a sociologist. It's just my keenness, because I've been working in a classroom teaching human beings, no, not just a subject. Primarily we are teaching human beings first, and then the subject comes. We need to understand all these discourses. So how could I envision of my teaching students in pedagogy, creative pedagogy, without understanding the socio political, psychological, historical, economic linkages which they are facing in the practice of their agency, as simple as asking a question, raising a hand, conveying something with silence at times, because silence is a speak all the time. It's not the silence, is silence. And you have these discourses of caste, discourses of gender, discourses of the silencing of people has happened over generations. If they are experiencing stress, how would you solve it in a 15-minute thing? You and we used to, people start providing solutions, for example. That would be, you really require this long deliberative, shall I say, very very creatively critical understanding of things. And that's the model of democracy also, by the way, at one level. No, democracy is all about discussion, and that's how they have this bifurcation of kind of the different people working in different zones, but nevertheless they are like like liberty, equality, fraternity, a holy trinity together. So if you don't understand these concepts today, it is detrimental. We can say, okay, that we can talk simply. I'm a parent, suppose, but nowadays so many parents are worried as to what is happening in schools. You see this discourse every day all over media, because you hear of tragic things happening, and then people trying to make sense of what is happening. And then there is this blaming of one thing or another. But now just imagine the adolescents who are there. How are they reacting to all this? When there's this discourse of shifting blame or whatever all the time, you need to have a longer dialogue set in motion and set in place somewhere. And I believe that educational institutions are located at such a juncture, especially the schools, and then afterwards the higher education as well, because now you add the angle of research. A recent phenomena sees that people in school are starting to publish. I don't know how does it make sense that you ask the school students to publish research papers. Firstly, let them know what research means. Research means asking simple silly questions without any fear, without any judgment, not a performative thing. No, you can't just all the time go around collecting points and accreditation, medals. And this is not how we can build our educational systems. So this is where I see this connect between the work that you are doing and the work that we do as teachers, and the work that parents have to do, the work that civil society members have to do at different levels. And media is so very important. So I was telling you about my growing up. There was a program on Doordarshan. They would say, "Zara sochiye." If you remember, say up, suppose you are peeling a banana off and then throwing it off, and somebody, falling. So they would depict it in a cartoon way, and they would say, "Jara sochiye." garbage disposal. How do you do garbage disposal? Zara sochiye, just think a while, what we are doing. So
Yeah.
if media can create that sort of, awareness and sensitive reflection, much more, much more than the idea of awareness is what sensitive reflection. Information is not consumed by people. Information is what they act upon, firstly in their minds. So the cognitive, evaluative, affective sides that we have inside of us, which this whole orientation of the social structure provides us with, that is at stake when we are dealing with the problem. And if one is able to muster courage, enough courage to solve a problem, just imagine a child solving a mathematics question, the kind of confidence that comes afterwards, and then they are able to take the next question in a much more willing way. बट इफ
Absolutely.
इफ राइट एट द बिगिनिंग there's a ओके, तुमसे इतना भी नहीं हो रहा है, ये देखो गाइड में कितना छोटा सा सॉल्यूशन है, that is, you know just imagine the damage that has been done to the child's agency of, now well-being, if you look at it in this way, trying to understand discomfort, from this engagement. Now we can understand the PERMA model that Martin Seligman talks about. They are saying that engage and empathize and motivate, these different sides that is there in the model that he talks about: positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. So the idea of meaning is central, and the whole existentialist approach is about meaning itself. Existence is first, then comes meaning. That's the idea of existentialism. You exist, and now you find meaning. So Viktor Frankl wrote a book about it. He was in a concentration camp, and when he experienced it, this book came out about man's search for meaning. That's the title. He says that just imagine people in a concentration camp, but they're not committing suicide.
Yeah.
Why? Because things are so bad, no? But still, they are trying to cope because they see some meaning there. That's his theory, logotherapy. He develops through this, the idea of meaning, introducing meaning to people. Meaning can really motivate. Sense of purpose is usually how we, phrase it, the idea of meaning, but it's a much broader, deeper concept. Developing
Dr.
that.
Ashish, if I may interrupt you, we
Sorry,
are at 12
I told
o'clock,
you you
and
have to, yeah, yeah.
I
Sorry.
think I was fixated on every word you are saying, so I also lost track of time a little bit. It was so wonderful, but I think what I'm taking away, especially in the last part, is how beautifully what you said ties with the work that we are also doing. With the listening at the center of it, and me as a counselor also, I found a lot of relation, a lot of similarities with and connection with what you were saying. So I'm taking back a lot of thoughts for reflection. I think as a researcher, you will be very happy to know that. But I want to also check with the. I know we are already over time, and we have engaged with you until 12. We don't want to eat into your time as well, Dr. Ashish. But if there are any very quick, small questions that anybody would like to, ask, that would be great. And Dolly, I think, will be also sharing the feedback form on the chat, and she has also beautifully summarized the lovely points that Dr. Ashish has spoken about in as best as possible. Any questions that anybody has in terms of student well-being? I think, Dr. Ashish, the perspective you gave really helped, at least for me. It really helped me come out of the hole that we were in and look at it from a much broader systemic point of view, which was something that was very refreshing and new to me. I hadn't thought about it like this. So thank you for that. Any questions, anybody?
Yeah, it's a very nice reflection somebody has shared about DD shows. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Great. So it
viewers, a
doesn't
lot of
look like,
people.
we have any
I have
questions, but I
nostalgia
think
about those days. Yeah.
like I was saying earlier, we could sit here and listen to you all day. I'm sure your students are very, very lucky. Thank you so much for taking this
Thank
time
you.
out on a Saturday morning. I feel like this hasn't been explored enough, given the new perspective you opened up for us. Maybe we will speak again about this a little bit more, if our opportunity
Yeah,
allows
yeah.
that.
If you wish to have more discussion, then I have no issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even now, we can extend for a few more minutes, because by the way, I was just beginning because when I was preparing for this discussion, this just I've covered 2 3 pages only, and I wrote 10 pages, so that's
Wow. Dolly, that's a note for you to make sure Dr. Ashish is on this forum again soon, so we can, definitely use the information that he's put together.
Yeah, and I'm so
Thank you.
thankful for such questions also. Dolly posed a very important question. Do we have any more questions or
Looks
reflections?
like Anuja has a question, and I want, if anybody has to leave, it's fine. Please fill in the feedback form, and, that would not take much time. But Anuja, please go ahead. You have a question.
Yes, thank you. It was really a very interesting perspective. Thank you so much, Dr. Ashish. Uh, I work with teachers and parents, and whenever we approach teachers or school, they always say we don't have time. ये कहाँ पे हम इसको fit in करेंगे? मतलब I'm trying to tell them that this is part of your everyday communication language. It's not a separate thing to be done as a module or a thing, but they have not been able to, I would say, practice.
Right.
So it is a very slow. Matlab, unfortunately, we were raised by teachers who were more mindful than now, and we could say that teachers were also guardians. But abhi wo bahut different ho gaya hai. I can see that at schools. So how do we? I want to bring that back in schools at least, because children are spending more time at schools, and they are
Okay.
getting bullied at school. They don't feel heard. Teachers are not approachable. And when I said all this to teachers, they realized that yes, that was a problem, but they also were not able to kind of pinpoint where should they start. So I told them, just start by being approachable and give that message out to the students ki you can come and talk anytime and all of that. But आपके हिसाब से हम इसे कैसे हमें करना चाहिए?
Ji ma'am, thank you so much for such an important question, because uh, this is actually the focus also when we say pedagogical ideas, pedagogical listening. Everything is having this connection with pedagogy, and teacher is the place, of course. I mean, where you expect all this will happen. The meetings that teachers have amongst themselves with students. So I would just like to ask you, do you have these uh, uh, you know committees or some kind of what is your experience of teachers having access to sitting together with students and teachers, other teachers also together, and talking like we have in university student faculty committees? So do you have such things in place, such mechanisms?
I don't. I'm not part of a school system.
I
I
mean, your
live in
from your discussions
existing
with teachers,
schools,
because you
but
said you
what?
work with teachers, no?
Yeah, so I have seen that teachers themselves are not open to communicating and collaborating with each other. मैंने ऐसे भी देखा है where even now very successful and kind of established CBSE schools have what do you call these hallway comments like, oh, so you think that subject is more important? That's why you're missing or choosing to skip 10 minutes of math? Is English more, like, those kind of things. And then the child comes in late and says that, oh, I was in science class or doing something. And the teacher immediately comments that, yeah, they don't think English is important, those kind of things. And those teachers, when I gave them these examples, they said yes, it happens. And the director said we have been trying to educate and tell the teachers these kind of snide remarks is not good, because it shows that teachers are not united. So हम उतने भी डिटेल में गए थे because it happens. और बच्चा तो एक बार सुन लेता है, they are like sponges, they absorb everything and then they know how to manipulate next time. So that unity is missing in teachers. Yes, that's true. They have staff rooms at all floors, but I guess staff rooms are like their independent areas or whatever you call it, maybe eating lunch and something. But I gave them a strategy that we used to do in US when I was there. Lunch bunch, identify your most needy children, and then उनके
Yeah.
साथ में just start having lunches, so that आप उनके साथ बात कर सको, उनके साथ कुछ rapport develop कर सको. And if every teacher does it with those, their identified students, at least वो communication थोड़ा सा खुल सकेगा. That's what I told them based out of my experience. But आपने इतने सारे लाइक कॉलेजेस में भी आप काम कर रहे हैं, तो आपका मुझे सुनना था कि आप कैसे इसे अप्रोच करेंगे.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, definitely. Because, and thank you for the reflections and the experiences that you shared. So I was just trying to point out because, it's one always has these ready-made solutions from the stereotypes, moving around us. So you would, it's very easy to, kind of, suppose you are faced with a problem. How now this problem is really having so many dimensions, but a stereotype would so you it's very easy to say that okay, these students are lazy or whatever, and at times maybe because of a lot of work stress that people have, they find it much more handy, to take recourse to this kind of stereotyping that goes on in society. But because a learning space primarily means questioning these stereotypes, so this is just the beginning, no? If we can, and it cannot be done because staff room, I know, is like a stress bust place where you take a break and but you need to have this, institutionally put in place. And now you have these guidelines being issued, no? Is the mental health is now, Supreme Court says it is part of the Article 21, that is right to life. It is an integrated way you have to incorporate with the constitutionalism that you have. The idea of mental health as a right. Firstly, you had this case of education, the Article 21A, that now education is a fundamental right. Similarly, now mental health is part of this, fundamental rights that now you need to put mechanisms in place now. So no more, we need this kind of discourse from the civil society. And slowly, when the institutional, steps are taken, you will see a lot of course, there will be a conflict. There will be, blame shifting. All kind of things will happen. That is expected. But slowly, you will see ways emerging to deal with these, issues also. And what better than a school to do all these things and a higher educational institution to do all these things? I don't know. I'm extremely worried about the lack of disconnect between schooling and higher education.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
what I experience all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
It is so fundamentally integrated, the idea of schooling with higher education, especially in our society, how we look at our kids,
yeah.
our parenting patterns, and otherwise also, if you look at culturally, the idea of raising a child, the CRPs, you call them in psychology, child rearing practices, it is a cultural shape. So is it possible in our culture, for example, how do you define adolescence? You can't put an age there, no?
Hmm.
It's a loosely defined category.
Mhm.
So you have to support the learners in a whole range of things. And for that, you really need deliberation, brainstorming kind of thing. So that is an easy way out that, okay, at times people may take because there is this institutional lacking. And this was the question earlier also Dolly was raising, that how to now have this holistic framework in place. But with these guidelines issued, and UGC also drafting, and you had this during COVID also, you had this guidelines, and later on we also had the Umid guidelines for schools. Also, we have the guidelines for the higher education. Also, we have the guidelines. We have these cases now. The Saha guidelines, if you've heard of, with this case that was recently there. So I feel that all of us can actually, take help in furthering this discourse in our individual capacities as civil society activists, as people who are teachers, as parents also today who are now finding parenting to be really, really difficult. And
Yeah.
social media, it is you don't know what to react to. In social media is so diversified and it's just so chaotic. So how would you see patterns? People would be so, X is saying something, Y is saying something. This is how you treat your child. No, I will give you these 10 points to create this kind of thing. You have to navigate. We have to navigate as people who are guides. The idea
Yeah.
teacher must be like this frame. That's why mentor, guide, listener, no, and somebody who is just working with you, and not just in his on her individual capacity, but as a collective. And that's where I guess the hope
Yeah.
may emerge. That's the relevance of such discussions that we are having today. And thank you so much for raising this. Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to touch upon that. You said the higher education and school system, there's a gap because parents as well as teachers both look at school से college का transition as a threat for the child कि तुम अभी नहीं कर रहे हो ना, अब देखो क्या होता है college में तुम्हारे साथ. But they are literally showing it as a threat that when you go to college, you'll be left alone. You don't have that kind of support. You will be on your own. You'll have to do things on your own instead of making it really a very positive and looking forward kind of experience that, oh wow, I'm looking forward to college because I can learn this and get those kind of supports. I think that's also a gap that someday in some session we have to touch upon. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you will have the labeling because if you are not having a route to address something, then how would the individual address something which they have not been trained to handle? Or they don't visualize, in their I don't know, the so-called word job description, that this is your job, you have to complete syllabus and this and then the performance pressure and all that. And similarly for the parents, that's what I was referring to. The parent
Yeah.
also has to now become learning parent. I know there are problems with that because you have diversity, no inequalities. Not everybody is privileged enough to have this kind of reading and to understand these complex concepts. They would look forward to the educational systems, and that's why civil society organizations can do a lot in this, acting as the bridge, ideal bridges, not furthering the discourse of the performative. So
Yeah.
that's what, yeah, so that's what I would kind of
Thank you.
hope for. We can live with hope, no? Creative hope, perhaps,
Yeah.
yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
hope is always a great note to end on. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for that lovely response, Dr. Ashish. I hope you all are able to hear me. My internet is acting up. I think this response also kind of shows that there is no one solution or one answer to the questions that we are asking right now, and it is always a systemic thing. So thank you so much for your insight and perspective today, Dr. Ashish, and thank you everyone for joining on a Saturday morning for a very, very important topic. We will
Thank you.
see
Thanks
you
for
all
having me here.
again
Thank you. Thank you.
next month, and
Yeah.
until then, thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Ashish.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Ashish. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks.